A tale to tell have I for you, about a maiden fair, and her knight in blue, and of the battles they both in fought, one for love of other, the other not, both of them searching for love true, one for self, other in blue, sought not for self, as shall unfold. Let the story be so forth told. Long ago, when all men wore long swords, and dragons guarded their death-filled hordes, and captured maids for knights to free, there lived a maid, a princess. She, of every want and every pine of the world was free. Her time she spent as a good princess ought, and the duty to marry well was her lot. However many a suitor came and proposed kneeling, she answered same that he was false and not in love, his wishes for money cursed from above. The root of all evil, said she, he's after. Sometimes she burst in tears, some laughter, and though the ranks of suitors grew, she hated all their attempts to woo. It is well known, as all should know, that princes are only permitted to go to castles to try to win the hand of the princess of any well-known land, and simple knights, not princes, are not permitted to approach a princess fair, and should they try even just in fun, the penalty is to be from a tree hung. Now, one fine day, in winter's frost, a good knight, dressed in blue and lost, found a castle, and seeking from cold refuge, entered to find a line of men. Huge it was, and never-ending it seemed. He could not imagine what it might mean, unless to stand and endure the hassle was required in order to enter the castle. So he stepped in line with hundreds of men before him to enter. He wondered again what this line meant, and why they here stood. It could be the ruler here was not good, or perchance that he was biased about who he let in and who he let out. With these fears in mind, the Blue Knight rested and resolved to endure what presented. The time flew quickly as he stood there waiting, moving slowly forward, his rosary stating, praying for strength to endure what may, and wisdom to know how to follow the way. The snow began to fall on him, and the complaining of the other men grew loud, and some began to fight. "Us standing out here in the cold isn't right." The Blue Knight stood and let them clash. He could tell that such men were selfish and rash. They had nothing similar to patience in mind. Whatever they were waiting for, they kept track of time. In the hall, the princess had just denied the 700th suitor, who had tried to ask for her hand. It was almost a script. "Will you marry me?" "No." They went through it quick. The princess asked how many more were waiting in the cold outside her door. Her maid replied, "I cannot quite tell, but there seems enough here to fill a dell, a large one at that, and filled to the brim." The princess sighed and looked very grim. Out the window she looked to espy the line. The sight of it nearly stopped her mind. "I cannot," said she, "endure more than one more suitor to enter here. Tell them that none save one more man may enter the door, and I shall choose that man once more. I shall look for one who seems to show that he would love me, through heat and snow, through pain or any troubling test. I shall look at that line, and I shall choose the best." The maid made announcement as she had been told, and every man there tried his best to look bold, to look noble, to look sure, and to look proud. Straighten up, shoulders back, stand out in the crowd. All the men were busy doing just this, but the Blue Knight, being at the end, missed what all the commotion about was for, and so he remained where he was once more. And the princess looked out, and saw him stand at the end of the line. He seemed just the man of all that rabble to be somewhat on track. And she called him to her, and sent for his pack, a page, who quickly returned with it, while the princess entered the hall to sit, and wait for this last suitor of the day to make entrance, and his script say. The doors opened with hesitancy, and the Blue Knight entered. "I welcome thee," said the princess from her throne, as he stood where he was, and stared at she. For princess she was, that he could see, and also the law, and the death penalty was strong in his mind. He knew the fee, and wondered how soon he would hang from a tree. Not knowing what he should say or do, the Blue Knight decided to remain true to all his beliefs, though it cost him his life. So he spoke up. "My lady, I ask not to wife. In sooth, I entered the line knowing not what it meant. I was cold and lost, and I thought that it was a line to enter your palace. Please, I ask you, forget your malice." The princess smiled at the Blue Knight and said, "Ha, by heaven, I have seen the light. You are no suitor, you are a knight, and God has sent you to offer insight. Knights are considered the most honest men, and I can trust you to recommend, without bias or thought of self-interest. Now, tell me, of the suitors, which one is best?" The Blue Knight realized quickly that he was being entrusted with the golden key that would open the ancient doors of marriage and send off the bride and groom in carriage. Not quite sure how best to reply, he said, "My lady, tomorrow may I watch over the suitors as they make proposal, and then tell my opinion who is best over all?" The princess felt that this was the best choice, and giving the knight place to rest, retired to her own bedroom aloof, which was in a tower over top of the roof. The suitors went home, mumbling annoyance about staying in the cold and given no glance from the princess, so they all went away, but planned to return to their line the next day. The princess slept soundly. She thought only of which of the suitors would spark in her love. The knight, however, lay awake in the wing, and clutched at his chest from the pain of the sting of the arrow of Cupid, for yes, he had fallen in love with the princess. Driven mad, he lay awake, wondering what he should do. Should he profess his love, promising to be true? The penalty for his attempt would be quite severe, and he knew it. Yet, said he, "She may forgive me my lowly state, and make me a prince. I'd be willing to wait, if not ready as she, but sometime in future I'll wait for years, ignoring the torture. If only to win her love, I would give everything I have that's good." But suddenly he remembered a say, "The man who loveth will not make his love return. He must give all, but stand aside, and let her make call. If she loveth him or not, 'tis right, for the love to decide of her own might, whether she loves her lover or no, and if not, he must allow her to go." The knight pondered this, and then let it rest, and knew that if loved her, he must do his best to bring joy to her heart in full, and do so with all his immortal soul, and remember not to stand in her way. Should he bring her joy, then with her he stay. If not, why then knew the Blue Knight that he should remove himself from her sight. Anticipation kept the knight awake. Prayer was his best comfort in his state, for he fought with his affection to hope to bring the princess true happiness, the one certain thing that all men seek, be they noble or poor. But the princess thought not of the knight any more. She did not know what it means to love, and the self-sacrifice that with it comes. Though fair maiden night and space staring anticipated the next day with emotions varying, it brought an unexpected plight. The knight woke up at about midnight to hear the princess scream out in fright, and to feel the castle tremble right down to the cellar with all its flagons. He knew the feel. 'Twas a dragon. The Blue Knight leapt from bed to door, and his feet flew through the hall no more time than it takes a buck to depart when the bowman misses his first mark. Out in the night raced the Blue Knight, alack, princess and dragon out of sight. Heeding not the cold or the relentless dark, the Blue Knight departed with a run for the start. The first of his search yielded nothing to him. His heart was heavy as though it bore the sin of Adam and Eve, whence evil didst arrive in this world, and since then does strive to devour any good that it can. The princess, the dragon, and the knight ran. He ran through the forest and splashed the water of the stream, and then he paused to falter. What if he were too late? Dragons hungry are, and often they don't want to battle in war. A knight with sword, or even with stones. Dragons, like men, are skin and bones, and any pain, either small or great, they would sooner avoid than allow it to make a dent in their hard, scaly skin. The dragon! The knight sped at the thought of him. As he drew near a hill covered with trees, he thought he spied something through the leaves, something like smoke. Could it possibly be the cave of the dragon? Could it be he? And what of the princess? Is she alive yet? That thought would have brought forth blood sweat, had not something else occurred to the knight, which gave the scene a faint glimmer of light. It is an old custom that all dragons keep at exactly 2 to stop and sleep, and snooze for an hour, and wake with a cry, though some dragons keep half open one eye. The knight knew this custom they keep, unfortunately not the half open eye. He knew nothing of this, and realized with glee that the current time must be 20 to 3. With heart full of hope, the Blue Knight went forth, looking for the cave entrance or dragon porch, where the dragon might keep the damsel distressed, and there the knight would free the princess and take her home, and so pleased she'd be, that of course, he thought, she'd love me, and loving, agree to marry, thought he, and then happy we shall always be. The cave was ominous, but joy to behold, in the doorway behind a large and old stone, there sat the weeping princess. Now truly, a beautiful damsel distressed is perchance the most attractive thing around, to any man, at least that the knight found, and he vowed he'd free her or die trying, and she, not knowing, went on with her crying. The stone was large, as I have stated, and on his own the knight debated whether he could move it or not, whether yes or no. With the stone he fought. He pulled and he pushed, pushing strength to the limit, and he was not alone on that dreary summit, for another obviously helped him pull, for heavy though it be, the stone didst roll. And the princess, seeing freedom so fair, leapt out of the cave with a joyful air, and seeing the knight, she paused in her joy. What was he doing here, this mere boy? Perchance he was older than her by some years, but his rank was so low it brought one to tears. He was a mere knight, and princess was she. He had no right to be there, had he? Ungrateful though she felt, she said, I thank you, sir, now for home sped, for this is a dangerous place, as you know. You brought your horse, I assume? No. The knight sighed deeply. I was in a great hurry, and I forgot to saddle my horse in the scurry. But I shall get you home, though it cost my life. He now had no hopes of her being his wife. The princess accepted his gracious offer, and thought once more of the suitors of her, and which one would turn out to be her lover, when suddenly the mountain crashed above her. A roar that split the ice on the peak and caused the princess to stand and shriek echoed from the hellish pit, and the dragon drew himself out of it. A red dragon he, with scales of fire, and tough as interwoven wire, and scarlet as the blood of the field of battle where many a man were killed. His claws and the ridges on his back were an obsidian color, jet black. His wings were huge, and his breath brought to anything certain death. The knight stared at the monster giant, then set both his feet in defiance. Sleep you ought, according to law. Of ancient dragons disobey you are. The knight set his hand upon sword hilt. Unless you retire, I have no guilt of slaying you, you great old worm. And he kept both feet on floor firm. The dragon laughed, a menacing sound. Fool, he roared, there's no one around, not even your horse, for I heard you so say. I know that I am the one who shall slay, for no simple young dragon am I. I am Rex, king, and strong as 35 dragons, so, fool, back down. And he lay his giant front claws on the ground. The knight didn't flinch. Turned his head, he said, Fair one, from this place flee, run for your life, him I shall stall, and not let him touch you, though I should fall. Run, and return home with speed, do not return here to look for me. If I should live, return I to you, to help find your hero, I promised to. The princess nodded, and ran away. Dragon, said knight, a debt you shall pay, for attempt on the life of the princess fair. Of my sword I warn you to beware. I give you now one more chance to ask and seek for forgiveness. If choose other, then deserve death you. The dragon roared, and up and flew. The knight wondered at this. Why did he fly? Unlike a dragon to not explain why he leaves a challenge of such a kind, when suddenly a horrible thought came to mind. The princess, she was running alone. What if the dragon found her before she found home? With a cry, the knight his strength found, when suddenly he was hurled to the ground. A blow from behind had smitten his back. He felt certain all his backbones were cracked, and now a voice echoed there. Who's slain now? Where's maid fair? And where's the dragon felled? Passed over the knight, shadow of the proud dragon who mocked the man. Now, weak mortal, kill me if you can.